How's it going again, guys? We are back, me and Jason. Once again, you get to see our lovely faces as we evaluate a pretty cool article, I think. The week three FanDuel optimal lineup and stack. It's kind of a way to, evaluate our own tools and kind of get some ideas of what some good looking lineups look like. So, how's it going, Jason? What do you think? You
Doing good.
digging
I mean,
it?
I am. I think this week, we tweaked a little bit in terms of what I went with as far as settings. If you're looking for the more traditional optimal lineup where I didn't run anything, you can go to our forums and check that out. I'm going to be showing off the models a little bit this week just because I wanted to get some different plays to write up. Because one, I just don't like talking about Kirk Cousins 4, 5, 6 times a week. So I think you can head onto the forums, but this is a little bit different.
I would make see you just set me up like a volleyball player to do a you like that joke, but I'm not gonna do it.
Why
I'm
not?
gonna
Everyone
miss
likes to
that.
be like that
I'm
joke.
gonna miss that on purpose and let it go out of bounds, and we're gonna lose that point. So
All right, we'll
that's on
rebound.
me. I got paid to throw that game, so I'm not. Yeah, I'm not in on the Kirk Cousins. Anyway, uh, so let's take a look at the cash and GPP lineups. First, the cash. I love this lineup. Tannehill, Gore, D'Angelo, Landry, Robinson, Brown, James, Vinatieri, Steelers. Uh, quickly, I guess we can break down where the money's going here. Obviously, the receivers. Landry, Robinson, Brown, I think, is a tremendous cash game move.
I do too. And so this week, I used our Vegas model, which will bump up players with high team totals. And that's certainly kind of where you're seeing a lot of the lineup being centralized from. Obviously, if you look Miami, Indy, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, those are all reasonably high team totals that you want to be targeting. So there it goes. It focuses around that as a core. We talked about Frank Gore on the FanDuel Cafe value and how he was going to fit into certain lineups. This is exactly how I was talking about as far as describing it. You are getting Landry, Robinson, Brown, Williams. You're even getting decent play there in Tannehill. You're going to have to use Gore to get those guys, which I think is certainly a viable option. My only thing that I didn't like, but obviously I think it needed to be there to make everything fit, is Jesse James. I don't like playing three Steelers in a cash game lineup, but I think it's okay here. I still think the floor and ceilings are high enough for all those guys that it makes it work. And if you wanted to get the Dolphins as a defense, you can drop down Vinatieri to a guy for 100 less and bump up Pittsburgh there. That might be a change to make, but overall, I like this lineup a ton. I talked about Tannehill being, cash game viable if it fits. Not my most trustworthy QB, but I think overall with this lineup, I think the pairing with Landry, tough really not to like this lineup really as a whole.
I think my only change would be swap off of Landry down to Diggs and then move up Jesse James to Pitta. And I think that's my cash game lineup. Like that's basically my cash game lineup. So, I love Vinatieri again. I think you can swap from the Steelers to the Bengals. But other than that, yeah, or the Dolphins. So I think this is right, hitting the nail on the head without really having to do any work. So I'm digging this. D'Angelo at 88, you liking that, right?
Yeah, I am. I think, you're pairing them well with those wide receivers. I think the Diggs drop down is certainly a noteworthy mention there. It's a good call to do if you do want to bump up to Pitta. Yeah, I don't mind Williams. I think we talked about all the value that's there this week. I think it's certainly viable to put him in cash games and work all those other options around. And the optimizer did that just as kind of how we described.
Mm-hmm. So for the GPP, you used the pivot model. What results came out and what are you thinking about it?
So the pivot model is obviously you're moving away from chalk, and you're trying to get those different plays. Cam Newton, obviously, he wasn't as high owned as I expected last week. And
Mm.
obviously, he's sort of matchup proof. We always know that ceiling's pretty much there against anyone. Um, I like him a ton just with the rushing upside. He's expensive. He obviously forces you to do a different line of construction paying up that high. Um, this is kind of where it starts to get weird. David Johnson at 8,400 comes into play. And I think with all the value running backs out there with D'Angelo Williams, who's also in this lineup, you're not going to see people paying for David Johnson. And I like David Johnson a lot. 8,400. I don't know how much exposure I'm going to have to him. He's going to be different. Um, for him to really pay off, you're obviously going to need his ceiling, but you're also going to need a lot of those secondary plays who at wide receiver who we'll get to really pay off as well to kind of make it all work.
Yeah, I love this play. David Johnson. I mean, you just think about it. Buffalo's having a lot of trouble in the pass game. I mean, David Johnson's an athletic freak. He's enormous, and when he gets out in the open field, you're just not tackling or catching him. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. See, production has kind of been limited and kind of like shading this breakout that's happening, but once the touchdowns start coming, this is going to be, big time. So I love this play. It's kind of a hedge off, rushing like the other rushing guys there. And I think David Johnson and D'Angelo is going to be super unique. So I love that top three for sure.
Yeah, certainly different. A lot of upside there. The only thing that really halts Johnson sometimes is Bruce Arians. I bitched about him all last week. I was pissed. But overall, I mean, we know Johnson's upside and also a reasonable floor just because he works so well on the ground and in the passing game too.
I love the correlation play with the Cardinals D as well. I think that's a very unique, I think that's going to be a unique lineup.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, usually you like pairing those kind of running backs with those defenses, especially this week. Possibility no Sammy Watkins. I mean, even if he's out there, really limited and now facing Patrick Peterson, there's no other weapons that scare me off him. I like the Cardinals defense in cash as well. I think they're a great GPP and cash defense. We get weird with wide receivers here. I mean, you want to talk about pivots. The pivots are made. Devontae Parker, Jarvis Landry are there, but obviously a deep ball threat at 5,200 like Kenny Stills, who can have that boomer bust potential, certainly worth a look in GPPs. 5,200, obviously a swerve off of some other options. Same thing with Allen Hurns. I mean, we've talked about Robinson. I like Julius Thomas. So I think, all the focus is on Allen Robinson this week to bounce back. Let's not forget about Hurns and Thomas has been a focal point of that offense so far. And we haven't talked a lot about Thomas, I think, with all the tight end options. With Dwayne Allen right there, Pitta, Thomas is a kind of an extraordinary low-owned tight end this week.
I think this is a really important exercise week to week. Allen Hurns and Julius Thomas were not guys I had thought of once, and I had just kind of latched on to Allen Robinson and, I like him as a GPP play. Hurns has just as much upside. I mean, obviously not on a week-to-week basis. Allen Robinson is the better receiver, but we've seen Allen Hurns have plenty of upside before. I love that play. I would not play all three of these guys together, but I certainly like them as standalone plays. I mean, Kenny Stills, he's had a rough go of it since leaving New Orleans, but I like that play quite a bit as maybe get one or two shares out of 30, but I do like that.
Yeah, as a core, it's extremely high risk, high reward. I mean, you're looking, you need every one of those guys to hit, and they're all boom or bust. Marcus Wheaton at 6K, who's going to be making his way back from injury this week. I kind of like it. Obviously not my favorite guy at 6K. I still think I might toss a Diggs in there to kind of balance things out and give me a little bit more stability. But certainly I think it's an interesting swerve. I think overall this lineup, obviously Mason Crosby as a kicker, I don't have much analysis on kickers. That's Denny's job. You can look at him, obviously one of the higher totals at home, 4,700. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, I like Julius Thomas, but I would move down to Pitta here and try to pay up for some better options at wide receiver. Maybe get Diggs instead of Wheaton. Then maybe I could, that's a lineup I'd be interested in. So, yeah. Hey, at the very least, that's very different. I think a few tweaks and you're looking at a really high upside, low-owned tournament lineup.
Yeah, I mean, this is what it's here for.
Yeah, absolutely. So the optimal GPP stack, we're looking at more Jaguars. What do you think of this?
I love a Jag stack. I really do. I think Bortles, Hurns, Robinson's a great stack. I think there's a lot of upside for the price. Once again, we're working with the same core of Frank Gore, D'Angelo Williams, and Antonio Brown. Vinatieri also getting a kicker. I still think I'd rather go with another defense than the Steelers. But overall, Jacksonville, man, I think there's a lot of potential here. Really 2 down games to start the year. people are kind of hesitant on deploying them this week. I still think Robinson will have some ownership, but Bortles and Hearns I don't see. I just think with both their running games, both in such a flux, how can you not like the passing games this week? I just think they're kind of getting overlooked. And then we also just kind of talked about all those other options earlier. I like this optimal stack here quite a bit. I think if I'm rolling one that's kind of a swerve off of some other guys like Pittsburgh, who you also still have the stack work in, but no real Chargers, no real Indianapolis exposure. You're not really getting a lot of other pieces. I think it's pretty centralized around a lot of these teams. So overall, I'd toss that in the GPP.
So, and the Gore Vinatieri grouping happened again. That's one of the best leverage plays of the week against Luck. If you think Luck is not going to do well, I think you play Gore and Vinatieri and hope for field goals and rushing touchdowns. I mean, I can't think of a better way, to get leverage on Luck. So yeah, certainly like that lineup, and the correlation there's definitely good. Is there anything else you want to throw in there before we head out?
No, I mean, I think if you're looking at these once again, I mean, I'm running these and not really making any changes. I think especially with the pivot model, you can run that. And then obviously we have our swap feature where you can edit lineups on the generate lineups page. That's a good way to kind of, you look at that pivot model, you see what they put on as far as contrarian plays, and then maybe you work in some safer plays around it to shore it up, because it really is super contrarian. The floor is very low, but to kind of stabilize it a little bit, I think as you mentioned with guys like Diggs and other options to plug in, you can do that. So overall, I think using that swap feature is huge, especially this week with all that value.
Absolutely. So this is cool. I like this. We're going to continue to do it every week. So check us out next week in week 4. We'll have some more, cool plays and lineups for you. As always, if you like what we're doing, then give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to check out these optimal lineups and you're sort of just a YouTube viewer, make your way over. We have a 7-day free trial of some of the tools, so definitely check those out as well. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys in week 4.